Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay. Hello, once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is your boy Slizwack, along with Rochel T. Heyo. And today, on this week's podcast, I'd like to welcome back. Okay, let's try that one more time.
Okay.
All right.
Cut. This is action. Cut action. Vocal timestamp. Cut action.
All right. Once again, welcome everybody. This is your boy Slizwack along with Rochel T for GHST on our weekly podcast. I'd like to welcome back all our returning visitors, everybody that's new, that's finding us out there on the interwebs. I'd also like to invite you to like and subscribe this channel. It helps us out a lot. And freaking links to a lot of the things that we'll be talking about today will be in the description. And speaking of which, the topic for today is stoner movies. Stoner movies. We're going to talk about stoner movies that are important to us. I was going to say top 5, but it depends on how stoned you are. So we're just going to say important stoner movies.
I like that. That's a good distinction.
Because, it's like some movies that are super bad, the higher I get, the better they are. Some movies that are super bad, the higher that I get, the worse they are. It just depends.
I like that. And this isn't... So are we focusing on movies that have stoner content or movies that you enjoy as your high?
Either or.
Okay.
That's why I say it's just movies that are important to stoners.
I get that. There's a lot of those.
Before we get started, what are you smoking on today?
Orange cookies.
Orange cookies. Smoking on some orange cookies today. I'm smoking on some... Please, YouTube, don't demonetize me. But I'm smoking on some Cream and Tina. It's running at 26.9% THC from our local dispensary, High Legs. I want to give a shout out to those guys. So yeah,
good stuff.
And I'll be smoking out of this little freaking bubbler here. But anyway, hell yeah. So go ahead and give me your first one. And these are in no particular order, I also want to add.
No particular order. However, I feel like, and actually you introduced me to this, I feel like you can't call yourself a stoner if you haven't watched Reefer Madness at least once.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like it's a requirement. Like it's initiation, that's genuine propaganda that the government was involved in putting out to the people. You have to watch it. Like you can't call yourself a stoner if you have not watched Reefer Madness. Absolutely. It is so batshit crazy.
And and now I think Reefer Madness is at the point where we're far enough advanced as a culture and a society so you can see everybody, regardless of which side of the fence they're on, can look back and see, yeah, they were talking some old bullshit back in the day. Because I got to tell you, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I have never seen anybody smoke a bunch of weed and just start playing mad jazz on the piano and being all crazy. Cocaine? Maybe. Weed? Nah.
Honestly, if they could make a sativa that was like that, hell yeah.
And here's what's so crazy. Weed, anti-advertisements, as I like to call them, have spanned the gamut. We went from Reefer Madness making people all crazy to the DARE program the dog asking you, hey, are you going to smoke that? And then the lady melting all into the couch all crazy. So yeah.
This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. That those ones really get me. I love the ones now where people are saying, the DARE program led me to believe that people would offer me drugs a lot more often than it ever fucking happens.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible. People love drugs. Nobody's giving away drugs. At no point, well, at least me personally, have I ever made enough money where I thought, you know what? I'm going to slip some drugs. I'm going to send these kids home with some gummies. At no time has that ever crossed my mind.
If you're a dealer, yeah, you're trying to get a new customer base. You give out freebies. If you're super wealthy and you like to party, you're usually doing something with freebies. Usually people pay to play. But yeah, that could be a scenario for sure. But usually in that case, you're already part of the scene. So it's not like you're just like
exactly
a random person who's like, yeah, let me get a bump of Coke. And they're like, oh, hell yeah, let me get you that Coke. No.
Exactly.
No.
Well, that's the thing. Kids don't have jobs. If I have a 7-year-old come to my door, I can hook him on heroin, but he doesn't have a job and doesn't have a way to get back to me to get more heroin. So
absolutely.
I might as well flush my shit down the toilet. And by the way, that was one of my freaking super important movies because it's one of those. It is. It's an iconic movie, and it's not iconic because it's factual or because it's freaking because anything about it is anywhere near true. And I can sum that up by this statement that I once heard a lady say to me or say to another person in real life. This has been probably 20, 30 years ago. As I show up to freaking with this to this dude's house and we're gonna go out somewhere skating or something. And I was like 15 years old. And this guy was white, and his grandma told him not to let the blacks get him to try the jazz cabbage.
Jazz cabbage? Bro.
I
hate her for saying that, but I fucking love her for saying that. Are you kidding me? Jazz cabbage? Oh shit.
When I heard that, I was like, and I gotta tell you, I wasn't upset because you gotta realize this is 20 years ago, and this lady was probably already 90-something years old, okay? So
you had the common sense to not be offended by shit you can't control. I get that. Still, well, fuck her in the neck.
Just like you, I was highly freaking intrigued by the words jazz cabbage.
Jazz cabbage!
I was like, what is that? Because I asked old dude. I'm like, dude.
Fuck is jazz cabbage?
I'm black and I don't even know what she's talking about. So yeah, it was kind of an eye opener. She's like, she's talking about marijuana. I'm like, oh, okay.
Any username I have to make in the future is going to be jazz cabbage.
But you know what? That phrase has always stuck with me. Freaking.
Why aren't you jazz cabbage on everything? Are you kidding me? I guess it's a little close to jizz cabbage, so it might be weird for a dude.
Yeah, I had that as my gamer tag for about 15 minutes when I first signed up on Xbox 360.
Yeah?
I immediately canceled that and then it went to something else. It only took like, yeah.
I found it. Yeah, Troll City, man. But I found a Twitch user in Australia that I was talking to, and his screen name is Cam Alex 94. What do you think of when you hear that?
I'm just thinking like somebody named like Cam is short for something, and then Alex is their last name, or maybe two people.
For me, I was like, oh shit, we got an OnlyFans girl who's jumping ship. That was my first thought. But that's hilarious because that just reminded me of that. Jizz Cabbage and Cam Alex 94. If you guys do Twitch, you should check him out because he's good times. He doesn't stream all the time. He's based out of Australia, and he actually he's part of a theater production out there. He's playing Othello. And he's playing this game that has the most annoying like sound bites ever. They make constant like they're atrocious. Intentionally atrocious as part of the game. But what he did is he muted all of the sounds and he does his own accents and stuff. It is so much fun to watch. Dude is talented.
Now that's kick-ass. And also, for all you guys that are wondering, our girl over there, Rochel T, streams, and I'll put her Twitch link right here across the top of the screen. So it'll be somewhere in here. You guys be sure to check her out. Bye-bye.
If you guys are into being disappointed and watching Goldfish Brain play important games that you love, I will destroy them for you. So fair warning, sign up for the content.
Heyo. And you know, I am whew. Hold on.
So for your what do you bring to the table for important stoner movies?
My important stoner movie, the very first one on my list is Easy Rider.
Nice.
And only because, well, wait, hold on. There's gonna be some people out there that don't know what I'm talking about. Because first off, no, it's not porn. So I'm gonna read you a little freaking blurb that's gonna tell you what it's all about.
Nice.
Easy Rider is a 1969 American independent road drama film written by Peter Fonda, Dennis Hopper, and Terry Southern. It's a landmark counterculture film and a touchstone for a generation that captured the national imagination. It explores the societal landscape, issues, and tensions towards adolescence in the United States during the 60s. It also explores the hippie movement, drug use, and the communal lifestyle. Side note or fun fact, real drugs were used in the making of that movie.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's for me, it's one of the first movies that I saw that has ever, really talked about drugs. And matter of fact, they were just using a bunch of drugs, not just marijuana, cocaine, heroin, they're like, woo, motorcycle life. Yeah. And the thing is, it's unfortunately, I don't think that's the point of the story. The drugs are just a side issue of the real issue. And what I mean is during this movie, they pick up a drunk lawyer in jail, Jack Nicholson. And when he takes drugs and goes with them on the road, he's exposed to a whole nother realm of society that he's never been exposed to. He's exposed to criminal activity. He's exposed to counterculture. He's exposed to wild orgies, people not believing in God and Jesus. And I think it's a symbolism of people being able to get to a different viewpoint, and that presenting them with a different view of life in general. Because he's on the same planet. He's living basically, when he's in jail, he's in the same town. You know what I'm saying? But he's seeing things, once he starts taking drugs, he's seeing things through a different lens. So
it's kind of a play on gateway, right? Because a lot of people say that, especially about cannabis, it's a gateway drug. That is, it's a very interesting motif in the movie because it is like one way, black and white, this is how the world exists. And then it's, you have this climactic change. And then you go into like the essence of life, the nitty gritty, what was actually happening at that time.
Exactly, because you got to realize this is during Vietnam era, so there's mad protests going on. And I hate to say it, sorry, freaking people of today, but I got to say that counterculture, the opposite of the norm was at its highest, what is as at its peak, and it's most different. And what I mean is the counterculture at that time was so different from mainstream society that,
Oh
like,
yeah.
now there's still counterculture and it's going strong, but it's not as far from mainstream society. Back in 1969 when this came out, that was a total 180.
Yeah. I would say like a real clash, a real culture shock.
Yeah,
It,
there's so
it's funny because one of my favorite punk songs actually says when counterculture is manufactured.
absolutely,
But that's true because now we have stuff like Hot Topic. Hot Topic would have
absolutely.
been a huge deal in like the 70s, the 80s.
Oh,
That would have been super shocking, even more shocking than original golf culture. Hot Topic
yes,
in a mainstream like such shopping mall that would have had people through the fucking roof. I remember in the
absolutely.
80s when Dee Snider had to testify before Congress because of all of
Oh yeah,
that, like, oh, anti rock and roll. Like, yeah, people would be shocked to see what we're doing now, but right now
yeah.
people aren't shocked to see what we're doing because it's
I'm
not
talking.
counterculture
Yes, I'm
like that.
talking to you, Ice T, who formerly made a song called "Cop Killer," but now plays a detective on Special Victims Unit. Talking to you. But anyway, and while that movie is about is centers on drugs, it's I don't necessarily think it's about drugs.
See, I have one on my list that I find is interesting, and it goes along with what you're saying. The point of the movie isn't necessarily the drugs, but it is an interesting look into the other side of the line. And so for
Yes.
me, I kind of look at Super Troopers. Super Troopers
Okay.
is centered around, it's centered around the highway patrol, right? Which we consider
Yes.
law enforcers. It has tons of humor in it, but
Oh hell yeah.
there are actually serious parts to it where they're trying to
Yes.
figure out who has jurisdiction. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do with a giant drug bust like that. They're showing officers taking home drugs, using them, and we know, like, in real life that exists. That's not, it's said in a funny way, but that is absolutely true because cannabis doesn't stick on one side of the line. And just because you wear a badge doesn't mean that you don't understand like what it's about, doesn't mean that you don't partake. I mean, there's that dirty cop side of it, but then there's also like the just genuine person side of it. So although it is just a genuinely hilarious movie, it is just super funny and should be enjoyed, but it also has like other social things that it's kind of like pointing at, even though it's in a funny way.
Well, I like that movie, and one of the reasons why I like it is because I'm a huge fan of documentaries, and to me, I'm not saying that's realistic in any way, shape, or form, but it is kind of a documentary because to me, I got to tell you, normally I'm on the opposite side of the state trooper line, and it's interesting how they present that. Hey, these are regular dudes. They fucking fuck off. They horse around. They got to joke around too. They just have a job that requires them to pull people over. And you're not happy when you get pulled over because you got to pay that fine. So to me, it humanizes state troopers and police officers, and it gives you a different side. Now it's not realistic, but it makes you think that, oh, you know what? I'm sure that guy has freaking some dudes he hangs out with. He probably freaking wonders what to watch on Netflix. You know what I'm saying? He
So
probably gets
So the characters themselves, I would say, are not realistic, but I think that each of the characters represents a trope in
yes,
society of like individual troopers or individual law enforcement or managers or whatever that you run into. I think that that's
absolutely.
100%. Farva, there are
Heyo.
totally douchebags out there like that in mass quantity. Like, they're there for the power. They're there to be like, look at me. Absolutely. We run into those guys all the time. They exist. The super chill dude who has like an open relationship and some kids, and he just does all the cool shit, kind of like the
Yeah.
unofficial leader. Yeah, that is actually a guy. That is actually a
Yeah.
person out there There's a ton of people out there that are like that, you know, but it's all kind of like all the tropes all in one. If you're tolerant,
Exactly.
you probably have a hippie wife with an open relationship. If you're an ethnic minority, then you probably have, you know, some drug use, like whatever. He's like wrapped up all these tropes into like one character. And all of the characters are like that.
And that's the thing. Everybody, every person in that movie is relatable. Even the kids that are getting pulled over by the police. Because as soon as you see that, your heart rate goes up automatically. Okay? Because you were like, oh shit, I see those lights too. And it's like, oh man.
Me and Jesse were watching Tom Segura's podcast with his wife. And he was actually talking to her about when he was young and trying to like get off drugs. Him and his friends went on a cruise and they brought a bunch of weed with them. I think that maybe it was some mushrooms. They had a bunch of shit with them on this cruise. And one of the crew members came up to him and said, hey man, you know, like you got to ditch this. I know I can see that you guys are intoxicated. We're going to have dogs on there tomorrow. Like you're going to get everybody fucked up. Just don't do it. Right. And then they turn around and their friend had flushed all the shit.
Oh!
Because he was panicking because they were like, nah, you know, and it didn't happen. They didn't have dogs come on and search the ship and blah, blah, blah. But the friend panicked and he was like, oh, I got to get rid of the evidence. Like, it absolutely happens.
Oh, and it's so weird. It really is, simply because there's not that many people that have been caught by the police with weed, well, in proportion to the amount of people smoking weed. Because most people are doing the legal thing and stuff like that. But for every smoker out there, that would make the beginning of the worst day ever. Whether you smoke weed illegally or legally, that would make for the worst day ever, no matter what. It's like, my heart goes out to you. Much love. So go ahead.
You go.
Okay, which one was that?
I said Super Troopers. So you're on your second on the list.
Okay. My next one is Pineapple Express. Okay.
Interesting.
I'm not gonna go into freaking the plot of that, because if you haven't seen that, you've been hiding under a rock, and you're probably not gonna be watching this freaking program because you don't have internet. So we'll skip right ahead. Okay.
I actually think that is the first like hyped marijuana focused movie like since Cheech and Chong. And I don't even think Cheech and Chong got all that much like hype really when they did what they did.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's the thing. There was some talk of when they made that movie back in 2008. I believe it's Seth Rogen and a few of the peoples that he hangs around with. Judd Apatow,
James Franco,
and there were people that were scared to freaking take roles in that movie, even in 2008, because they thought they'd be stigmatized for starring in a marijuana movie in 2008. Okay,
that's crazy.
Leslie Nielsen starred in All the Naked Guns. He's doing well. He's probably not doing fine. I think he's dead. But if he's not, don't tell him I said that. But yeah, and that's the thing. Even in 2008, there were people that were scared to take that role. But once again, it's a movie that is talks about drugs, but it's not really about drugs. It's a metaphor for something that's been created recently. And when I say recently, I mean since 2000, with the large and appropriately so legalization and acceptance of marijuana as a medical and recreational thing.
It was still pretty brand new back then.
Yes.
Any kind of medicinal was like super far-fetched. Exactly. There were some states in 2004, I think, but like 2008 was still brand new to that even conception of legal marijuana.
Well, and that's why it still resonates today, is because we have so many states that are legalizing, and it
Mhm.
represents, at least to me. Have you ever had some marijuana that like was super awesome, and you like comb the earth to freaking get that one strain again? It's like, oh, there's this strain I had. Let's call it Blibbity Blop. Okay. I had this Blibbity Blop OG back in the day. It was great. And the first strain you look for whenever you go to a dispensary, whenever you see people that are selling weed, you're like, do you have Blibbity Blop OG? And they're like, maybe. And if they do, you can immediately taste it and tell if it's not, because everybody has that one strain. And basically, while they went and got some weed from uh Dante, uh it's a symbolism for a search for great weed. There's mishaps, there's adventures, but there's less mishaps and adventures now that's more legalized. But yeah, if you've ever gone on a mission to get some stuff, you totally identify with that. And it's even weirder now, because now it's like a treasure hunt.
Mm.
If you're in an area where it's legal, if you go to the dispensary for weed, there's a ritual that you do. First thing I do is I check my phone, because I sign up for all the sales, all the discounts. So when they send out a blast, I check my phone. Okay. Then I go online, do a little research, check and see who has what, who has the best prices, because I'm cheap. And then I drive around. I drive to the place, because I haven't even seen it in real life, and I have to check it, and it might be some old bull crap. So it's almost like a scavenger hunt, really.
Yeah.
So
Totally
because
relatable.
the worst thing is, I do all that research. They say they have Blurberty Blurb OG, and it's $1 a gram. I show up there at 10:30 when they open up at 10, and they tell me, I'm sorry, sir, we're all sold out. And then I hear these little
Oh.
yeah, then I hear these little sad trombones in the background. And it's like,
So,
and it
are we announcing the giveaway?
we did the giveaway on Saturday night.
Okay. The
Um
weekly?
yes, the weekly. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do it on Saturday night, every night at seven or 7:30, I
Okay.
think. I put it out on the thing. Um I tried to
Okay.
make some announcements, but I think for some reason, like, I'm getting some of my posts blocked, and I don't know why. Freaking on
Mm.
Facebook, because we love them. Oh, wait, hold on. Not Facebook, but Meta. They're changing their name. Haven't you heard the news?
No?
Oh, man, they're changing, because, yeah, they're sorry they gathered all your information and freaking sold it to people, but they promised to destroy it, all of it, and not do it again. At least that's what they said to Congress.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Meta.
So get ready for a new load of bullshit.
If I did not have family that wanted to stay in touch with me, I probably would get rid of Facebook. I would have no problems walking away from that platform.
I 100% agree, because I was fact checked on a post that said, hey, never let anybody tell you what you're worth, because they're probably going to underestimate you.
You got fact checked on a motivational quote.
They blocked it. They blocked it. They said, this is partially, I got one of those, this is partially untrue because, and you had to click it to show the rest of the thing.
They just hate
I'm
you.
like,
they're just out.
yeah,
They're just out for your nuts.
pretty much.
So my next movie is, I'm torn. Okay, we'll talk about Knocked Up.
Okay,
This one's kind of a throwaway, right? Because I like it because it shows I think, real world use very clearly. And the center of the movie is not drug related. It's
No.
focused on a whole other problem, which I think is why it's so cool that it's like it's I think that movie is a good example of naturalized. Like all your other shit's going on, and then this is what you do, or this is what you and your friends grew up doing. You know, like that is a legitimate scenario happening somewhere in the world. You know, they've got a bunch of friends living in a house, and then there's one dude who's trying to get his shit together. That is
And
absolutely happening right now.
and see, that's the thing. I want to say this to all the people out there, to the naysayers. And what I mean is, people that smoke weed, they do regular shit. And what I mean is, it's not just a guy or a girl or a couple just sitting in the house just fucking bleep all day. First off, that shit's expensive and you have to work for money. So, yeah, they got regular shit going on. Their girlfriends break up with them. They drop their keys. They freaking lock their keys in their car. They freaking forget to pay bills. They got regular shit going on. Most of the time, they're smoking weed because they're stressed out from that regular shit. The only difference between them and you is they're more relaxed.
And you guys, everybody does that too. So at least they have the excuse of, well, I was smoking out.
Yeah. Hey, I think a joint should be the same as the soccer mom saying, "Hey, I need to have a Pinot Grigio after that parent
Right?
teacher conference." You know what I'm saying?
Right?
But
You're not, and
we're
you're
not.
not trying to poison your brain doing it either, because that's how
Yeah,
alcohol works, everybody. And you didn't know this. Alcohol slowly poisons you, and that's what drunk is. Like, that's what your brain is doing. That's why hangovers happen and fucking suck, especially when you're dehydrated, because you're dealing with poison. Like, that is
well,
not even like, that's not a cap. That is just pointing out what
yes.
it is doing to your body, what drinking
Well,
is. So you're telling me it's okay for a lady to have a glass of poison, brain poisoning juice, and that's fine to relax with, but I can't take a couple of hits to like relax and unwind. And let's
yeah,
get this straight, as long as you're smoking away from your kids as well, like, you know, smoking, take it outside the house if you
yeah.
have sensitive people like that around.
And here's the,
So I don't know, like that irritates me, and it's because it's legal. And we had prohibition, so there's still people who look down on people who drink. But it's okay for
yeah,
people to do the drinking. It's not okay. It's not that it's not okay. It's not acceptable. If you pulled out a
yeah,
joint and your friend was coming over to help you do something or come over for dinner, there would
yeah,
probably have to be a conversation, depending on what kind of
yeah.
friend they were.
Now, I've been some places where I've pulled out joints or a pipe, and people were like, "Oh yeah," and I've also been places where I pulled out a pipe, and people says, "Oh man, what is he doing over there?" So,
Yeah.
in which case,
Oh my gosh,
I
what is he smoking?
casually slid it back into my pocket, but but it's not all bad, and people aren't really dicks. Of course, there's been a couple times I've been out to eat, freaking had a nice meal, and just casually slipped a joint out of my pocket. And my wife is looking at me like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" And so I casually slipped that joint directly back into my pocket. So, yeah, too old to go to jail,
Uh, so
but
what's
still
next on your
fight the
list?
power. Next on my list is an older movie, but it's not that old. And what I mean is, this is a movie that is a literal classic. It's a little bit older for most people. The Breakfast Club. Ma-
Interesting.
Made in
You're pulling
1985.
that out of left field. That's
Well,
crazy.
well, for the people that don't know about it, I want to read a little bit from the plot because it was
Okay.
in 1985. There's probably a lot of 80s babies that were only like 2 or 3 years old. Here we go. The Breakfast Club is a 1985 American teen coming of age comedy drama film written, produced by, and directed by John Hughes. It stars Emilio Estevez, super popular at that time, Anthony Michael Hall, who was super popular at that time, Judd Nelson, also super popular, Molly Ringwald, and Ali Sheedy, who a lot of boys had posters of them on their wall. as teenagers from different high school cliques who spend a Saturday in detention with their authoritarian assistant principal. So basically, it's a bunch of kids from the jocks, the stoners, the preps, and all that shit that get thrown into this after school detention with their dick of a fucking assistant principal. Now, don't get me wrong. This movie, absolutely not about weed. Not about weed. It's not even close to being about weed. But there's a part in the movie where all of the people from all of these different cliques at one point managed to sneak out of this detention and have a small joint of weed. And that is a representation of weed bringing people together from all different freaking parts of society. Now, don't get me wrong. Weed is not a magic pill. It's not going to magically make people love each other. But what I will say is it illustrates the fact that if more people smoked weed, more people would get along. It still wouldn't be perfect, but if all those guys and I don't know how many of you out there been to high school, most people normally have, but in this particular instance, and if you've been to high school, you know at no time ever would those groups intentionally mix themselves for any reason.
Yeah,
Because no matter how much progress,
especially not in the 80s.
yeah, no matter how much progress we make, high school is forever going to be clicky. Because not based on race, but just based on kids, because kids are mean. So, yeah. But in 1985, I was 11 years old. Now, I didn't necessarily know what weed was. I just remember thinking, I want to smoke that cigarette that makes people get along. I really don't have an idea what an assistant principal does and why that guy is such a dick, but I want to do that thing that made all those people interact and team up together, actually. So,
That's an interesting take on Breakfast Club.
now I want
That's
to tell
like
you guys.
the last part of the movie.
Exactly. And I feel like the last part of the movie, it has to be like that because of how segregated and how freaking different of philosophies they have throughout the movie. All those people in there in that detention would never be together if it wasn't for that detention, and they never would have spoken to each other. If you didn't have all that friction buildup in the beginning, the end wouldn't have made sense, but it had to be some type of coming together to unite them all, and that's what's freaking makes the movie, like I said, not about weed, but it spreads the message of weed.
I get that. So I think
Hey,
my next
I
movie
smoke a
would
lot of
be
weed.
Jay and Silent Bob. I think my next movie would be Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Okay. Now that's one you're gonna
It's
have to tell me about because I've never seen it.
Jay and Silent Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is about Ben Affleck writing a story about or taking their stuff and taking it to Hollywood. And so they're going to Hollywood to try and destroy this so that they don't become sellouts. That's the plot. All kinds of shenanigans, all kinds of Jay and Bob moments. There's a monkey at some point. Like all kinds of crazy stuff that they get into. And it is very like funny stoner. Like I feel like Cheech and Chong was like the before half, and then now you have characters
Okay.
like Jay and Silent Bob or anything Seth Rogen does, where it's like funny
Okay.
stoner updated, right?
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
And I mean, they came around in Clerks, so technically of those movies, any Kevin Smith movie is technically a stoner movie on the to watch
Okay.
list. I would
Okay.
say
Yeah.
technically. But this one
I
in
hear you.
particular is like, I feel like that new age comedy. It's the new Cheech and Chong like moment where they're going on a road trip to accomplish something because of their ideals or whatever they've got going on. And then they run into all kinds of crazy adventures in between. And then, you know, they finally get to the end of it. And it's just like funny humor, comedy stuff. But it's just that updated version of what Cheech and Chong did. I guess not everything
Okay.
because they don't cover a lot, but
I hear you.
yeah.
Well, see, I'm going to write that down now because actually I've never seen that movie, and I'm going to actually freaking go and freaking check that out. And we'll probably have links to all of these movies that we've talked about down in the description. So if you're looking to watch any of these movies that we've talked about, they'll be down in the description.
I actually found a list of movies that were rated in like Rotten Tomatoes, like, you know, best stoner movies, whatever. And they had a ton on there that looked super crazy. And I'm like, oh, recommendation. So let me
Okay.
read you
Okay.
some of the. Well, so Jesse actually told me about This Is the End. I want to watch
Okay.
that one. I haven't watched that one yet. That's like the newest, I would say, like stoner comedy moment. But Evil Bong. Okay, there's a movie called Evil Bong, and there's
Okay.
actually 3 parts to it. It's like Evil Bong
Okay.
Returns. Like,
Okay. All right. Let
so
me
I
write
put
that
that on
down.
my to watch list because I'm like, what the fuck is that?
And this is actually the list on the Rotten Tomatoes. I'll have a link to that list also in the description.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Um, yeah, so I was also getting recommendations, trying to think about what I would consider like, you know, the what I consider my stoner movies. But
Okay.
it was giving me all of these recommendations too. So I'm adding to what I think my list should be.
Hey, if you're watching us right now, I want you to put your top stoner movie in the comments. The I've got one more. I've got one more, and we've talked
Okay.
about it. We've talked around it, but let me just address the elephant in the room. I'm only going to talk about one because they're all ridiculous and they're all great stoner movies. They're about weed, some of them aren't about weed, but if you're smoking weed, you get it. I want to focus particularly on one out of many, and this is a gem of freaking in 1978, but when it was made doesn't matter because people still watch it every day. It comes on late night at night. It's on YouTube for free. You can literally download it on freaking any torrent site. And that particular movie is Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke. Let me tell you, and like I said, it's one of many. We've mentioned them throughout the whole entire podcast. And I just want to make sure that freaking Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong get their props because what they did in Up in Smoke, and there's a whole plot to Up in Smoke, it's not important. You're going to be
It's a
smoking while
very
you
good movie
freaking,
though.
yeah, it's not important. You're going to be smoking
It's
weed
a
while you
very
freaking
good
watch the
movie.
movie. It's got Stacy Keach in it. You know what I'm saying? But, yeah, these guys actually did a lot of weed comedy, a lot of weed stand up, and they adapted that to a lot of their movies. And for a lot of people, that was the first mainstream exposure that they got to weed that actually was hilarious and not a lie and freaking kind of lightened the mood. It wasn't telling them one way or another about drugs. It's like, hey, we're doing some shit. And let me tell you, while we're doing that other shit, we happen to be doing drugs as well. So, yeah. And I think it's interesting because it also gave a lot of people an insight into a culture that they weren't exposed to. I am sure I am absolutely sure that there is probably about 75% of the audience had never seen a steering wheel that tiny ever in their life. Guaranteed. I was one of those people because I'm like, I'm calling bullshit on that. And yeah, at that
That
time I
movie was
couldn't
my
look at.
first. That movie
Go
was
ahead.
my first Cheech and Chong movie. That was the first introduction into like that whole
Yeah,
thing. But my first Tommy Chong reference was in that 70s show when he was
yes,
playing the, little like photo booth guy. Like that was my first
yes,
introduction to him as a kid. And then as I was able to do what I wanted, I was able to get introduced to that whole thing. But it was Up in Smoke that I watched.
yeah, and that's why I chose that one because, like I said, there's a whole host of movies. If you type in Cheech and Chong in Google, you're just going to get a fucking laundry list of movies. And now, not only movies, you're going to get some CBD brands, you're going to get some TV shows that they're on, and everything else. They're an actual thing. But, like you said, Up in Smoke, if people have never heard of them, is the movie that they normally start with. And it's like, it's a great movie because it illustrates an ideal normalization of weed and the mishaps that go along with it. Freaking trying to get away from the man, freaking forgetting things and asking yourself the same question. Freaking, hey, Dave's not here, man. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a whole host of freaking stuff that, you know, and it's interesting that you mentioned it like that because most people that freaking start smoking weed within 30 days of that they come across Cheech and Chong, and 90% of them, at least the ones I've talked to, Up in Smoke is the movie that they, I don't know if it's because they have the ice cream truck made out of weed, I don't know if it's because of Stacy Keach, I don't know. It's it's great, and there's no bad thing that I can say about that movie. It's if you got something to say bad about that movie, challenge me to a fight in the comments.
So for me, the last movie that I would say should be on every stoner's list is American Ultra. And
I've
that's
never seen that.
because it's American Ultra starts out so like weird and then it gets crazy. It is a stoner movie because that's what the main character depends on to in order to
Okay.
like stop his messed up brain from taking over. But
Okay.
it's the first, I would say, like stoner action movie, like where it's the actual
Okay.
intent of the movie to be like fast paced, like action. It's the first one that I
Okay.
like think of when I think of like there's no like because you're thinking categories like yeah there's stoner romance, stoner rom coms, humor.
Yeah, yeah.
I would call American Ultra the first stoner action movie,
Okay. I'm gonna check that
and
out
I think it
because
goes into that like normalization thing because it was made in recent years, so it's updated, relatable characters. Kristen Stewart's in it.
okay.
Kristen Stewart
I
and the kid who played. Oh, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. My dog. Sit down. Down.
he's like
Mr. Boy Attack. Oh God, yeah, he's trying to
anytime
say all kinds of things.
anytime my dog comes and hits me up, like bumps my knee, I imagine
No,
Brindle
go lay down.
going up to the Kmart, and you know how you can press the button on the intercom and it says customer needs assistance in wherever you're at? That's what I imagine. Customer needs assistance. Dog needs assistance.
No, but yeah, American Ultra. I don't think it gets a lot of love, but I would say
Okay.
no. Go lay down. That's what I would say. No, go lay down and watch it.
Hell yeah. Hells yeah.
Go
And
lay
man,
down.
it's and
Go lay
that's
down.
that's gonna about wrap up our, and I'm not gonna say our top, but I am gonna say our important stoner movies. Yeah. If you've watched us this long, if you would like to freaking view more content like this, I recommend that you subscribe. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We have a multitude of content on there. Fun fact, we'll be doing some reviews coming up here, so look for that in the air. But yeah, once again, this has been Rochel T and your boy Slizwack from Go Here Smoke This. And like every time in every region, and to take care of your own medications, you should grow. We'll see you next time.